Welcome to Nowhere. I'm your host, Keegan Otwell. In this episode, I interview Nicole about her experience growing up in foster care and becoming homeless at a young age. This is a facet of homelessness that I've wanted to cover for some time in order to highlight the risks that some youth have of becoming homeless simply by aging out of the foster care system. Nicole is currently co-host of the podcast Sunken Press, which covers issues local to the Alton area in Illinois, and so far they have interviewed mayoral candidates as well as a pastor who started overnight warming locations, which is a really good interview. And they also have other interviews, like one with a man from the area who decided to volunteer for Ukraine, and which is a fascinating episode. I definitely recommend checking that podcast out, and I'll put a link in the show notes. And then, I'm gonna let you all get into the interview. We talk about her experience, which, sparked some really good discussion in the latter half or so of the episode. This was recorded in a public park, so you'll hear some birds and children screaming in the background once or twice. And I'll go ahead and play that now. I know that you were in foster care. Being in foster care, is that what kind of led to you being homeless, just like aging out of the system?
Yeah, it's a combination of that, and I was in specialized foster care through Camelot Care Centers in Springfield, so it was for kids with behavioral disorders. And most honestly, I came in to foster care as a teenager, so
okay.
It's almost, you're going to have issues if you're usually behavioral issues if you're in foster care as a teenager. I had been through all the foster homes. I was of age. I thought I knew it all and wanted to be independent and on my own, having no fucking clue what that meant.
Yeah.
And bills and responsibilities and life.
Yeah. Well, I guess so. First, I should have you introduce yourself, I guess.
Maybe. Okay. Hi, my name is Nicole.
So you're a comedian?
Not anymore. That was a midlife crisis, although I do adore comedy.
Okay.
And I did and met a lot of cool people when I was doing it.
Right on.
I'm just me. I don't know.
Podcast host?
Yeah, podcast. I host a podcast, Sunken Press, with my friend Corey. And I'm a nurse. I'm a single mom. Work, daily grind, struggle, still live paycheck to paycheck, but trying to thrive in a chaotic world.
Well, your Facebook posts are still usually pretty fucking hilarious.
I am a Facebook comedian. I will give myself that. I try to be.
Yeah. Yeah, right on. Were you on your own when you were 18 then?
So when I aged out of the system, basically there was a combination of, you can stay until you're 21. Not a lot of people know that if you're going to school and you have a foster family that's willing to have you. But unfortunately, I had gone through every foster home. I was, at that point, struggling with suicidal ideations a lot. So I was in and out of the hospital a lot. Basic, like trying to heal from my trauma, but not knowing that I needed to heal from my trauma kind of thing. So they took me in front of a judge because they were like, there's no places for you, man. You don't want to listen to the rules at any place, and so you're on your own. So they took me in front of a judge, and he declared me, I guess it would be emancipated, technically,
Emancipated from
the state. Yep, and so they dropped me off at Helping Hands on 11th. Is it 11th Street? I think so, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Which was terrifying.
That's fucking wild. Yeah, because I don't think a lot of people know. I've really wanted to talk to someone who kind of aged out of foster care, because I feel like a lot of people don't realize how many people who experience homelessness have had that experience. Like, especially when I was on the road, there were so many of the fucking travelers who were aged out of foster care and were hung out. Oh, you're fine.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
who just like aged out of foster care or ran away or whatever, and then got picked up by traveling kids eventually because they were living on the street. And
yeah, that's kind of what happened to me. I mean, and
Yeah.
you know, in between like the shelter, there was an old foster mom who would let me stay there, crash once in a while. You know how it is. Like when you're homeless, you find people to crash with. You know, couch surfing. Can I stay for a night? Can I trade this or that?
Yeah.
I stayed with a couple of guys who owned OJ's Fish and Chicken, which was on 9th Street for a while. I think it's California Kitchen now.
Okay.
But, and they let me basically live in their house for a few months as long as I worked, you know, whenever they needed me kind of thing. But they took advantage of me. They stiffed me on most of my paycheck and then kicked me out because...
Fuck, man.
Yeah, they didn't like alcohol in their house because they were Muslim. So I was like, oh God, well that sucks. I'm sorry. Like I like vodka, but
Yeah.
so yeah, it's just a combination of a lot of staying at the shelter, staying in between, but going from, I mean, even foster care, that's a cushy life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Versus being in a shelter and having nothing of your own. And instead of traveling kids, I met a guy who got me smoking crack, which was kind of, I still find it a little amusing that I had never done anything besides weed and drinking until then. I hadn't even done cocaine. So I was like, that's kind of did the whole drug cycle backwards.
Yeah. So were you 18 at that point?
Between 18 and 19, that was going on. So yeah.
I mean, what was that like? Just did that kind of derail like your life a little bit?
I'm not even saying derail, that I had no life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I had nothing. Like I didn't care. I wanted to die a lot, all the time, and crack actually gave me a purpose at the time. Like that was like the only thing that was keeping me going. And I graduated high school by some miracle, which was very hard. I went to I think 4 or 5 high schools through going to being in foster care.
Damn.
So it was a miracle that I did end up getting my high school diploma, but I had no other skills. Like I hadn't, you know, I went to college for like a month, you know, kind of thing, and dropped out quickly after I graduated. So I didn't have any kind of skill set. I just didn't know what to do.
Did you, throughout foster care and like up to that point, did you ever make any friends who became like family to you, or reunite with any of your actual family, or like did you have anyone solid like that you could fall back on at all?
I mean, solid, not really. I did have people in my life, and at the time though, when I was going through what I was going through, I didn't realize that they cared about me, but they also had to put distance from me because of my own mental health and my own addiction. So like I have half siblings, and I have a sister who I love, and we don't see eye to eye on anything, and she's like about 12 years older than me, but on and off when I was a teenager, and that's how I got into foster care, as I lived with her. It's how I ended up coming down here from Chicago, around this area, and in the Springfield area. And she ended up kicking me out for a good reason. I wasn't a horrible child. I wasn't in a lot of legal trouble or anything, but yeah, I had a lot of behaviors that people didn't want to deal with, and needed a lot of therapy that I didn't think I needed, and no one was prepared to take on in their homes, especially she had small kids at the time.
Yeah.
But, she was there for me. She's always there for me if I need somebody to talk to. But it's resources why she couldn't, provide me with the basic necessities of what I needed.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And I had the old foster home I talk about, Wanda. She's since passed away a few years ago, and she was a really good person, and she loved me, and she was like a grandma to my son after he was born. But it's the same thing, she couldn't take on housing me in her house. But, if I ever needed to talk to her, she always had an ear for me, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. And then when you were talking about crack kind of giving you a purpose or whatever, I mean, it makes sense to me in a way where, I mean, some people, people call it self-medication for a reason. Mm-hmm. It's like drugs sometimes if you're at the lowest point ever, that's the only thing that can fucking get you through it to the other side.
Yep.
But
it did. It was. It made me feel something. It made me feel like not want to die for half a second. So yeah.
How long did that go on for?
Roughly about a year. Me and Alex's dad traveled. We went to St. Louis, and then we decided we were going to go to Memphis because somebody told us it was a good place to start over. We stayed in motels. We hitchhiked. We ended up in Memphis, and it had been a long journey of motels and traveling from state to state, and then eventually we were talking about going to California.
Yeah.
And one night, it was, I don't even remember, I was miserable, I was tired. We would panhandle, they don't make them like they used to anymore, but back in the day you can get like in the dollar store, like a pack of 10 Butterfingers, 10 Hershey's, like little mini ones in a little package. And because we both looked so young, we would go door to door and say that we were from like a Job Corps program, trying to sell candy for a trip to Paris, France, or something like that.
Yeah.
And we would go around, and a few times, like, luckily we didn't have a lot of interactions with the police, and I know that's a big thing for, and I do think the fact that I'm white makes a big difference. You know,
Yeah.
he was Mexican and Puerto Rican, but like, I think having a white girl along it made it a little.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people who are in the house do have a lot of run-ins with the police. If they caught us panhandling, you know, they were like, move it along kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how we made money, and I was exhausted, and we were two crackheads, so it wasn't a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And it was the night that Nicole Smith died, and I remember he had left me in the motel alone, and he called me and said he was going to go smoke crack without me because he didn't want me smoking crack no more. And I was like, I just don't want to share your crack, sir.
That's crazy to be like, hey,
like,
you need help, but I'm going to go do this.
So I was just sitting there watching TV, crying, and I looked around, and I was like, what the fuck are you doing with your life? What the fuck are you doing? So I literally left the motel, dropped off my key at the front desk, and walked around for a while. Stuff back then is still very hazy. I slept at a bus station that night, immediately regretted everything in the morning, and then tried to find him. And trying to hitchhike and bum rides from people, especially from men who wanted something from me, and had to tuck and roll out of a car at one point to get away from somebody. Like, I just wanted a ride to try to find him because he wasn't at the motel any longer. And I took that as a sign. I was like, you know what, I need to be strong kind of thing. Like, so I called my sister, and she said that she would send me a bus ticket to live with my brother in Iowa.
Okay.
And so I got on a bus. It was a very long bus ride. It does snow in Memphis, and it was snowy in Memphis.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that year it snowed, and I didn't want to get somebody called me for my last $10. I just wanted to pack in Newports when you can pay under $10 for Newports in the good old days. And he's like, I'm going to run up the street there because you're cold. And God, I was like, how'd a crackhead get over another crackhead?
Yeah.
He did. He got me. And yeah, I ended up at my brother's, which was still, you know, when your house, you're crashing people, you're still homeless.
Yeah.
When you're on somebody else's, what is the term I'm looking for? When you're relying on somebody else for your basic needs.
So how old were you when you had Alex?
I was 19.
19.
Yeah, I just turned 19, it was.
So you two were together in Iowa, and then...
No. So I was in Memphis, and I got my brother at the time lived in Iowa, and so I took a bus out to him, and that did not work because he has his own issues. So I ended up, it was I found out I was pregnant there.
Okay.
And I had already, gotten clean from crack, but I was drinking still and stuff, and, found out I was pregnant, got, stopped all that, and needed some support. And my distant family, on the other hand, they're not. There's a reason why I grew up the way I did, and my family is kind of fucked up. So relying on them did not work out because I moved. I went from Iowa to Chicago and then ended up back in Springfield.
Yeah.
So and I had to hit up some people before I came back because they had a hit out on us because when we left town, we skipped town because we owed a lot of money. So.
Damn.
Yeah. But I don't know who would give addicts $600 worth of fronts.
Yeah. Must have been very convincing. That's crazy.
That was, it was a regular thing though. We would, every day, we would get front.
And then go make the money.
Work the next day to pay it back, and then do it all again. Get another front, work the next day to pay it back. And so I had to actually, reach out to one of the guys, and I still remembered his number, and be like, hey, is it okay if I come back here? And he did give me the go-ahead that I can come back to Springfield. So I ended up back in Springfield, where I was still homeless, though. And I stayed at the Salvation Army. And then I ended up in a Christian maternity home.
Fuck, holy fuck.
Yeah, like an unwed mother's home.
Oh, unwed mothers.
Yeah, that's kind of, like the 1950s.
They use that phrasing?
Sometimes, yes, they did. But it's the closest social description of what it is. Like,
that's wild.
Yeah. He wasn't like anyone needed to get married, but they wanted us to get saved. And it was I have a lot of problems with Christianity and people using Christianity to...
On vulnerable people?
Yes, on vulnerable people. I was very vulnerable. I had no freaking clue. All I knew is that I was alone, and I felt like, well, this was my last ditch. I guess it's Jesus thing, effort to do it right. And I got saved when I was like 8 months pregnant. Found part of the requirements of you staying there is you find a home church that you go to church every Sunday. You have Bible study every Wednesday. You had to follow the rules, the curfew, no dating, no boys allowed at the house. And it was just a house, just a simple house. And I did meet some amazing people who embody when they talk about Christ-like is in the Bible. And while I don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God, I do believe he was a really cool dude who really loved and wanted to get that message out there. And those people that I met through, so I have no regrets, honestly. Yeah, it traumatized me a little bit religiously, but,
Was that here in Springfield?
Yeah, it was actually over by Sacred Heart Griffin, Lawrence, off of Lawrence.
Yeah.
And it's still there. Bear LaHighroy. And for what they were, if you were raised Christian and that's what you believe in, then it was a great program. But if you weren't, then it's hard to knowing that I was going to be homeless if I didn't find a church and try to fit into this mold.
Yeah, that's kind of mind-boggling, honestly. Yeah, it's I feel like it'd be on one hand if they're offering that's one thing, but if they're you have to do all of this, that's kind of...
And some rules, I understand that, the whole no boy rule, hey, you know what? You're homeless, you're pregnant, you probably shouldn't be dating in anyway, so you know what? I get a lot of the rules, did make sense. But I don't know, it was hard. It wasn't, I felt like as soon as I didn't act like a proper Christian, I did end up getting kicked out. I got in an argument with one of the people, but I was also going through postpartum depression and had, the rules are you can stay there during your pregnancy and up to 9 months after the baby's born.
Oh, wow.
So Alex was a few months old. And it was very, very, very stressful because there was, you have to live with a bunch of other women. You have to, sometimes your stuff gets stolen, sometimes they're using drugs, and that, triggers your shit. And, I remember one of the girls and me got into a month-long, who washed the pan, who was going to wash this pan, because it wasn't my pan. She's like, it wasn't my pan. I said, I didn't dirty this pan. I tried to throw it away after a month of it. We would do all the dishes around it, that kind of living with other people in close quarters. It's an actual house. It was technically 2 bedrooms, so 4 women can live there at the same time with the babies. 3 bedrooms. There's a house mother that lives there. She actually gets a stipend. She lives there permanently with the girls, and then 2 other bedrooms, so and you double it up, and then they had bassinets and everything in there, and so it was very close quarters, and
it reminds me a lot of sober living, because I'm also in sober living right now, but
so it kind of it's very so can you like no privacy, no, I mean
luckily I have my own room, but there's a lot of places where like people are doubled up in the rooms, and I hear about stuff that goes on at the women's houses too, but the only nice thing about Oxford is that it's like democratically run, so we don't have like an actual person in charge, it's just all of us. But
that is nice.
that sounds, there is a bunch of other like religious places though in Springfield. I don't know what those are like. So were you friends with any of the women, or were you just trying to survive at that point pretty much? And
so it was the house mothers. I'm still really good friends with one of them, and I love her. And we bonded over our love of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Joss Whedon. But no, I really lost contact with most of the people that I lived there with. But after I moved into Mercy Communities, which I don't know, what that is. It's in Springfield as well, and it is an amazing program.
So.
It is. It literally saved me. It's a 2-year transitional living program, so it's not class. I guess it's still kind of a shelter, but it's on 19th in Kansas. So over there at Carter's Fish, down the street from there, in Boyd's New Generation restaurant.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing program, and it's an apartment complex.
Is it for women?
Yes, it's for women and children.
I think I know what you're talking about.
And you have to have children, though. You do have to have children to live there. And so it's like they have bedrooms, or not bedrooms, but apartments that you get an apartment. Like when I moved in, and I love it because I still actually have some, like my first potato. Everything is donated. So it's donations, a lot of donations from the public. And they fully furnished it. It was so, I still remember the relief that I felt of going in there. Yes, it wasn't mine, but it was the first time, I had a kitchen. My son had his first actual bedroom. I had my first bedroom with a door on it since I was actually, I've never had really my own bedroom, ever.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I've never, even when I was a child, I lived in orphanages when I was younger, my grandparents. I slept on a hide-a-bed in the living room. I never had a space that was my own. And
so that must have been a huge fucking deal to have.
It was. I mean, and there was a couch and it was a chase seat, and I loved it. And it was really nice. And the rules of that place are that you can either go to school and you will get your rent entirely paid for and your utilities paid for up until a certain point, or you can work and then pay it was a very small amount. I can't remember the percentage, 15-something% towards rent while saving money. So I went to nursing school, and
Fuck yeah. Were you, I know now you're a pretty fucking good cook. Did you just teach yourself to cook, or how did that go?
Yeah, I did actually, and that's when I started. That apartment was where I started to learn, because my son at that point was about 1.5 years, 2 years old, and there's these thing called kid cuisine meals with the blue box, and he was eating way too many of those, and I didn't know how to cook at all. There was some basic recipes, I had a foster mom who taught me how to make tuna noodle casserole, so that was something I had a lot. And it was just a lot of microwavable easy shit, box shit, and I don't remember, I think they were given to me by people I met at church, or maybe even from there, but they gave me some 4-ingredient cookbooks, and then eventually I just started getting more cookbooks and started just experimenting and trying stuff, and realized that I was actually pretty good at it. Not at first though.
Yeah.
I had to practice.
Yeah. That's cool. So you said there was a time limit on how long you could be there, or
2 years? Yeah.
2 years. Was that so were you in there the entire time you were in nursing school?
Yes. Yeah, because I went to a 9-month 9-month speedy. That's not the right word.
It's more concentrated though?
Yeah, it's LPN program in Caspin, so it was all together, because I think we had a little bit of break in the summer. It was January to December is when our school was, and then a little break in the summer.
Nice. So moving out of there, is that where you working and you got your own spot?
Yes, I did. I just started working. I had saved up some money. I had some, I think around that time, it's been so long ago. It's almost 20 years.
Really?
So it's been a while. I think that I had an uncle. So when my parents passed away when I was younger, and I got survivor's benefit from both of them, which is just the government just paid my grandparents because my parents were dead. My grandparents did try to like save up, like a little fund for us and everything, and they did have something set aside. So at that point though, like they would sometimes help, like they were still alive and they would sometimes give me some, out of that fund that I realized they had gotten into because life got tough. So, but they like helped pay the first month's rent and everything.
To be able to just get into the...
And then Mercy Communities also does that. I think they
nice.
Like when you are moving out, they help you out getting set up,
That's cool. Yeah, I don't think I realized all the stuff they did there.
There's a lot that, like, Mercy is one of, like, the, I love that program. Like, I did meet some amazing moms that I'm still friends with. Actually, Tara from Intricate Minds. Do you know her, Stanage? I love her. She's done a lot. So she opened up a nonprofit in Springfield a few years ago. She did a lot of, like, that police officer, the protest down at the police station. She does a lot of that and organizes, and she did a nonprofit, and they offer everything from free meals to haircuts, toiletries, and actually that's how I met her, is we were both homeless with our children in that program, and she went on to do amazing things. I know a few other people from there that I'm still, like, at least on Facebook, life gets crazy, but I love to see them doing well.
Yeah. That's awesome. I was curious about that. Did they have Solid Rock Youth Foundation here when you were?
No, they had, and I can't remember. There was a couple of programs, and one of them I joined, and I did have a caseworker from them. But like I said, when I needed massive amounts of therapy, I had been traumatized. I had never really dealt with it. I mean, honestly, up until last year, I never even dealt with all of my childhood trauma, from things that had happened in foster care, things that happened from the moment I was born. Like, I needed help, but honestly, I won't blame, like, I was also a teenager, so I was hormonal. I thought I knew it all. It's kind of hard to help somebody, but I feel like that's true of most people who are unhoused, because most people do have a reason. You know what I mean? Like, there's addiction, there is mental health issues, but those people still deserve to be clothed and fed.
Yeah.
Even, that's the bare minimum we can, we can't force anyone to get help for the reasons why they're homeless. Yeah. And you might not be able to make them have a place that's stable, because it does take a lot. Like, I still live paycheck to paycheck, and I still struggle with having that fear of having me and now my children, I have 2 children now, be homeless, especially in this fucking economy. It's super scary. And so, and I struggle with that and dealing with my own mental health. So I can't imagine somebody who has even, mental health that's worse, and they can't deal with it and are addicted. Like, they're not gonna probably find a stable place, but they can still find resources in our community to help them get some basic things met. Yeah. Like, I know that's like the warming shelters, like Helping Hands during the winter time, they have the basement, I think it is, that opens up.
I think they do have another space they open up. That's been a big thing that I've been focusing on recently, is the winter here. But I mean, like you were saying, like a lot of what you just said is what I've been thinking about a lot, because there's a lot of homeless people who, so it's like Springfield has this whole thing through Heartland House that works with all the other services, where they're trying to get to like functional zero by 2028, which is like there will still be homeless people on the street, but the idea is if you become homeless, you would be off the street within 30 days if you choose to get into the system.
And see, that is like, there's so many factors it goes in.
Yeah, because there's still going to be people on the street, even if we get there, and we're not there yet. But
like, my time in Helping Hands, I saw a lot, and I saw, like, my friend, the one we call him Bomp Bomp, and he had his discman bouncing with Dancing Queen nonstop. And he was a veteran, and he was the sweetest guy. But you know what? He didn't want to stop drinking, and he didn't want to stop using drugs. And he always, like, he's claimed he was purposely homeless. Like, he got his, check from the VA and everything, and a disability check, and he lived on that and would travel from town to town, and that's how he ended up in Springfield. He wasn't originally from there, but it was hard for him. He got kicked out because he couldn't abide by the rules. If you come back drunk, you're kicked out.
Yeah.
If they know you're high, you're kicked out. And I know that it's hard because, like, yeah, how are we going to offer a safe space with a bunch of people who are high and drunk, though? And I understand there has to be, and I don't even know what that is. But
I think it's, with the Alice thing especially, it's all about harm reduction.
Yes.
Like, people think of harm reduction when it comes to drugs, but harm reduction is making sure people don't freeze to fucking death in the winter.
Like, we are not going to get, and I love that there are people trying and who have that idealistic, oh, we're going to get everyone off the streets, but that's just not feasible. But there are programs like Owls that we can put in place to at least have people not die.
Yeah.
Like, and honestly, Springfield has way more resources than we do in Alton. And I know there's a bigger population here, but us being so close to St. Louis, and I always, like, as a county, Madison County is kind of, large. So,
like,
it's
a lot of people live in Madison County.
I always feel like there should be more, and that's why I love, Peter, starting that, because it was something that was needed, and that was kind of like, at least in I don't know how it is now, but 20 years ago, the only really places we had were Helping Hands. That there was a shelter above it that I had stayed at as well. Like, after I came back to Springfield and was pregnant, that was only for mothers and children.
Okay.
Upstairs in Helping Hands, and then Salvation Army, of course. And really, those were the two, if I remember correctly, the main ones. And it's still like you have to follow these rules in order to live there, and most people on the street are not going to be able to follow those.
No. I mean, fuck, I was homeless for a few years, but I never stayed in a shelter because I was just like, I'm not, some people, like, there was this one woman I was friends with who was homeless off and on from the age of 11, but she grew up in Chicago with her dad who was homeless, and she'd be on the street with her dad, then put in foster care, and would, like, eat food and take a shower and then run away and go back to her dad. And she started popping trains when she was like 14 and shit, but she got diagnosed with schizophrenia at some point, and she's in her 30s now, but she literally can't, every time she tries to stop somewhere and live indoors, her mental health just fucking plummets, and she starts having, like, schizophrenic episodes.
Well, and it's also usually, any place you're going to find that's affordable usually is an apartment. I know that, especially if you're a single person, and when you have schizophrenia, like, my brother is schizophrenic, and he has had, like, living with other people, he gets really paranoid. Like, he just tried to kill his neighbor because of that. Like, last year he tried to kill his neighbor because, and it's like, it wasn't just an isolated incident. Every neighbor he ever had, he had thought that they were out to get him, and would start, like, just doing some really weird stuff. And I think, like, honestly, living in their own house away from people is probably the best thing. I hate to say it, but when you get that close, like, communal kind of living, and you have something like that, and delusions and hallucinations, it's just a recipe for disaster. A lot of times. I mean, my big thing with, like, this, I'm kind of looking forward to the next winter that's coming, and I've been talking. What got me onto it was this dude Donnie, who I interviewed over, like, a series of months, passed away, froze to death in January, like 2 days before getting housing. And this got me, I interviewed the pastor who did his funeral at the mission, and that's when I started learning about all these other deaths that have happened. And so I'm still, like, have people to talk to about other people who died during the winter, but there's Corey Beebe, who he was another person who was just never, like, from everyone I talked to who knew him, he was, like, a super fucking cool dude, but he was just never going to go through the system. Like, it was never going to happen.
but he died from smoke inhalation in a house fire from like trying to stay. It was like below zero outside that night. So it's like a result. But like my thing is, it's like if we can't, I'd like to see something like owls happen here, but I think on the most basic level, I'd like to see outreach where people are given like at least sleeping bags and tarps, at least, if not also tents, where it's just like.
Now I have to ask, because I don't know much about it, but I did hear or read, because I do still get Springfield news updates, and just because I do consider this one of my homes, and I love Springfield. There was a tent city for a while, though, wasn't there? A couple years ago. I mean, that's what they called it in the news, but I know there was fear-mongering speech. But
I mean, there was a solid one, kind of, when I moved back here. That was like so maybe back. It would have been like COVID times. And
that's probably right. That's when I heard it first popping up. I know they had some issues when police go and taking down all their stuff.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what was going on with that stuff, because I was I just come off the road. I was not fucking doing good back then, or plugged into the community in any way. But I remember seeing it though, and like seeing pictures and reading articles, and it was like over on the north side, kind of.
Yeah.
There was like a patch of a little field, I think it's like maybe a square block of grass, and that's where.
See, the problem with that, and I don't know if you had watched the Sunken Press other episode, where we talked about the camping ban a little more, but like Alton has a camping ban, and that is like and a lot of like places are also, like towns are also going to that. So I love that you want to see that, Keegan, but I don't think that that's going to happen, just because, especially with the Capitol. I know back when I was homeless, the library was a really place that most of us hung out, because free air conditioning in the summer, heat in the winter time, or at least outside, at least there was an awning from the weather, but most places they don't want it because tourist reasons, a lot of it is.
And I don't expect us to have like a tent city again or anything like that, but
even just like for people who are I love the idealism, but I just don't see especially city officials handing out anything. I mean, maybe, secular programs or places like.
Well, I'm literally like, I'll fucking do it at this point. Like,
no, I love that. Grassroots is where you got to start. A like political level with our city officials, though, that is, they're not going to be the ones to do that. But it definitely has to be a grassroots thing. I don't think I can rely on the government to do that by next winter. I think the idea with getting all the stories together is like, if I can't join up with something that already exists that's like community based, it's like maybe I can just use the stories to get funding from people for it, but I don't fucking know, because people are dying and it's crazy. But with the camping ban stuff, they tried to pass a camping ban here after the Supreme Court decision in July was passed to make it where anywhere they could outlaw public camping, pretty much. I didn't realize that had gotten passed in Alton. Was that like over the summer? Honestly, I can't remember exactly when it was, but yes, they did. I know that Corey is he was staunchly against it and spoke out against it when they were voting for it on it, and a lot of people, it split down the middle, because it's like, I kind of understand. I understand that places like Tent City have their own issues, especially with violence within the community. There's a lot of stuff that happens, and I'm not talking about drug use. That's the least of anyone's worries, but violence. I remember you mentioned when you hit me up at the podcast, we're talking about the guy who got killed at the library for a sandwich. Like that kind of stuff happens though when you put a lot of people together, and it's like, what do you do though? Like how, like it is a very tough question, and I think if more people like you who want to do something about it, cared enough, we can probably come up with a solution one day. Yeah,
I mean, it's just a spectrum really, and it needs a spectrum of responses.
And it does have to be like a need by need basis too, though, because not every person, just like, my story of being on the street is very different from your story of being on the street versus the next guy, it's just every person has a story, and I love that you are trying to tell it.
Trying. Yeah, that camping ban shit is crazy. They didn't they tried to pass it here. There was the city council meeting, and a bunch of people showed up, and we all talked there, and then they didn't. The problem with it was that they're introducing, like a fine system where it's just like, you can't just like fine homeless people.
Yeah, no, that's not gonna. But
it's crazy.
That's how I feel about parking tickets.
Yeah.
These aren't gonna get paid.
Yeah. I just actually learned recently that one of the guys who like Silicon Valley tech right is getting pretty like enmeshed with our government, with like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and all that shit. But there was a guy, Joe Lonsdale, who started out in San Francisco as a Silicon Valley tech bro and got involved in local politics there, trying to make homelessness illegal. And then since then, so he's a co-founder of Palantir, which is like this evil fucking military company.
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Yeah, it's so for instance, the most recent thing they did was help use AI to automate targets in Gaza so that the IDF could just like indiscriminately just like bomb
Oh, wow.
like whoever they wanted, and they're just like, well, it's the AI that's doing it. So but he started a thing called the Cicero Institute, and they actually are a huge contributing factor to the Supreme Court outlawing homelessness on a national level. And I'm just like learning about this stuff, but it's fucking insane. It's like, of course it comes from these like fucking like comically villainous like fucking evil motherfuckers. God, I fucking hate them so much. Someone really needs to just like...
That's usually, there's definitely, and I think there's always going to be a stigma behind, unless people have experienced it, there is a certain amount of privilege. Even my good friends who, try to understand.
Even the liberals.
Yes, even the liberals don't understand what it's actually like to be completely alone, completely on the streets, completely not having to think every day about how you're going to eat, how you're going to sleep, what you're going to do. And it's a stress in itself. You can't think about anything else. How can you think about, healing the reasons why you're there or getting sober when you can't even, when you're hungry, when you're, it's wet outside, you're cold outside,
Yeah, it's definitely wild. It's, just coming from your situation too with the foster care, and then, when you're describing all of that, I'm just, in my head, I'm like, man, I can't imagine being that young and just like not having just, I'm sure there's like a certain kind of loneliness that comes with that and bouncing around and just having to fucking kind of figure shit out yourself. And that's, people, you're right that people don't understand, and there's so many different reasons why people are homeless.
There are. I know people, like I said, I still have that fear of, I do live paycheck to paycheck, and I'm a nurse, and people assume that we make decent money, but not enough to survive, not when you have children, and groceries are like they are. There is nothing, I have to look back and think I'm not where I was, so I have to look back and be grateful for that, but it's still hard. Like, families are always at risk of,
and most of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
Yes, and so whenever when somebody judges people and acts holier than thou, I always like to point out, dude, like, you are one, what if you get hurt?
Yeah. Donnie, so Donnie got hurt working. He was a union foreman, never had problems with addiction. Was like, had a really good job, got hurt working twice, surgery, put out of work, got put on Oxycontin, and then the rest is fucking history. And it's just like, people...
And people don't get not everyone goes into it. Like, in my case, yes, honestly, my, person at the time was like, you want to smoke crack? And I was like, yeah, what do I got to lose? But most people aren't like me. I was stupid and I was young and I was like, what the hell?
Fuck, man. That was me like not that long ago at all.
I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who end up addicted, especially to opiates, are people who had an injury, who, I have struggled with addiction my entire life, and I take a harm reduction approach, but I still have issues with alcohol consumption. I have to be mindful of how much I drink, of when I drink, of what mood I am when I drink, things like that. And, even after I became housed and had some semblance of security and my needs met, I got addicted to Vicodin from having a tooth that like for months I had a tooth that I need to go to the dentist for, but I couldn't afford to go to the dentist at the time. And then somebody was like, you want to take one of these? Hated it at first, and then I needed it because it was the only thing that would knock out the pain, and then all of a sudden I'm snorting it. Like, I mean, shit, like it's sometimes
that's
it's
such a crazy thing with opiates too, because it is like a lot of times the first time you take it, you're like puking and it feels shitty. But then
I remember I ran over a male. It affected me so much the first time I took one that I was trying to go do laundry, and our washer or dryer was broken, but our washer wasn't. So I had a bunch of wet laundry. I was taking the laundromat, and I thought it was like in 2 hours since I had taken it, but I was still loopy. And I ran over the neighbor's mailbox and almost hit their house.
Damn.
Like, and then it got to the point where I was literally going out drinking, playing darts, hanging out, being social, and snoring it in the bathroom while I was drinking. Like, there is a very, when addiction is hard, like, and people will still, even after their house, people will still struggle with the same things they're struggling with, and that's just life. Like, we all have our shit. Like I said, everyone has a different story, but I think it's a lot easier to get help and address those issues when you're not worrying about if you're gonna die in the cold.
And that's why, I mean, the housing first shit is just how it has to be done, where it's like, because it's like if you're on the street and you're an addict and you're dealing with mental illness, being on the street is just not only perpetuating that, but actively making it worse. So it's like you have to get out of that situation before you can get help, which is why I hate programs that are like, well, you have to come here, do all these classes, like do all this shit, and then we'll get you housing. And it's like, well, fuck you guys. Like, they're trying to survive right now. They don't need to just get them housing first, and then they can do the fucking classes or whatever the fuck. But
and especially, I'm not trying to say women have it harder, but especially for homeless women, like, I know that I was lucky in the fact in my addiction, I didn't have to do things like sex work to get by. But if I had stayed on the streets, oh yeah, because there was already a few times where I had considered it. I had somebody who actually wanted to be a pimp and actually set me up a date, and I backed out at the last minute. Like, I had thought about that stuff because I didn't know what to do, and I had women who had been in that life for years, like, women who had been living that life of addiction, who had been selling their bodies for years, who were telling me, this is what you need to do, and this is the way you get over on it, and this is the way you get money from men and get what you need is by having sex for money. And it's not a judgment thing why I couldn't do it. Personally, for me, I could never bring myself to do it, though, and it terrified me, but had I not had that thought when, I always, honestly, and Nicole Smith, I always thank her. I do. I'm just like, say a little prayer for Anna Nicole Smith, because she's the one who got me to stop smoking crack. Because when she died, it was all over in the news, and I had loved her. And it really was like, holy shit, like, she just died. And she was a mess, and I don't want to be a mess. And I loved her, and she's had so much life in her. I don't want to die like that.
Yeah.
Like,
that's crazy. Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, you might be able to say that women just like objectively have it worse being homeless. I think that's kind of
it's a lot more dangerous.
Yeah.
It is a lot more dangerous. Like I
mean,
said,
you were talking about hitchhiking by yourself, which is like,
and that was only and that's what's scary. That was like the time when I was in between of like left that motel in Memphis, and the next day was trying to find him to try to get back with him because I was scared. I didn't know. I was like, he's the one that's been like helping me like survive. Like that's why and honestly, if I'm being real, that's why I attached was it love? No, I was scared. I saw this person who, maybe he got me smoking crack, but we always had a place to sleep. We always had, he managed to make it happen, and I was a dumb teenager who had no clue how to fucking survive. So I was like, well, if at least I'm with him, he'll get his shit figured out, so he'll have my shit figured out. And so like there was that 2 days of like being alone, like completely, like I already was alone, but being alone where I was really afraid of what was going to happen and trying to find him. And I remember the guy, and it did look bad because I knew he was going to be at a motel, but I didn't know which motels. I was having this dude trying to drive me down. He probably got the wrong idea, but he touched my knee, and then he locked his door, and then I unlocked that door so quick and just, I was like, I don't care. And then it's going to sound so bad, but like at the time, when I left that motel, and then it was 3.5 weeks later, when I took a pregnancy test, that I realized I was pregnant. So I did all that while I did not even know I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's an adventure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely, I mean, like, even, I mostly hitchhiked, well, I guess it was half and half, alone and with a friend, but, like, even myself, I had fucking weird moments with creepy dudes.
Yeah,
and
I can
like,
imagine. Yeah.
I can't imagine, you know, I'm kind of a bigger dude. I had a dog with me, you know, it's stuff like that, but it's just like, I can't, yeah, it's definitely scary for fucking people out there. Well, I don't want to hold you too long.
Well, if you have any more questions, like I said, this is your show. I'm just
I mean, I appreciate you
in.
talking. Yeah, I appreciate you talking to me. I feel like we talked about some good stuff.
We did.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being willing to talk to me.
Well, thank you for having me on it. And I love what you're doing. You keep it up.
Yeah, thank you.
I've missed you.
Missed you too, yeah. All right. That was the interview with Nicole. And I didn't mention it in the interview, or I didn't mention it in the intro, but we actually, I have been friends with Nicole for quite a while. This interview was actually the first time I saw her since, I believe since the night Trump got elected in 2016, which was a pretty shit night, to say the least. But yeah, check out her and Corey Davenport's podcast, Sunken Press. It's good shit, and Corey has done a lot of really cool investigative journalism over the years for the Alton area in general, too. And yeah, I just want to thank Nicole again for talking to me. I think we covered a lot of good stuff. Obviously, it's not easy being a woman and going through that experience at such a young age. My heart really goes out to young Nicole as a single mother. You know, obviously I don't know how hard that would be. You know, like she said, our stories are different. Everyone's story is different, but just being that young, having a son, and just not really having those, like, family members that so many of us have that, you know, you kind of depend on for things at that age. You know, even into your 20s for certain things, or kind of have people you can fall back on, but it just seems like so much to handle at such a young age with your own child. I really can't imagine, but, you know, I think it's amazing that she came through it all and made it through nursing school. Yeah, I think it shows a lot of strength, and obviously some of those services were crucial for parts of that to happen, but yeah, it's really amazing. And yeah, I don't know, you know, I had a lot of friends on the road who came up in foster care and ran away before they were 18 or aged out of it, and, you know, a couple of them are still out there, but, you know, there's a couple of them that also, like, aren't around any longer. Stories like Nicole's goes to show that people who think homelessness is a choice just don't really know what the fuck they're talking about. And yeah, I think I'll end it there. Just want to thank Nicole. Have some things coming that I am very excited for, so stay tuned. More episodes soon. Oh yeah, and God bless you, Anna Nicole Smith.